quick introduction. A lot of people have a question on what are canned emails or what are the purpose of canned emails. So canned emails give you the ability to store templates of emails that you consistently send out to your clients. The purpose of creating canned emails is to save yourself time from recreating the same email over and over again. So to kind of sum that up, canned emails are basically any email that you're always sending out to clients. And instead of going in and you're always typing that same phrasing, the same thing, you can create those in Dubsado and house them in the system. So that way, anytime you need to send that email, whether it's manually or whether it's through workflow, and we'll get into that later, you have that stored in the system. So you're not going in all the time and constantly writing the exact same email for the same type of client. So canned emails can either be sent manually or they can be sent through a workflow. And like I said, we'll get into that later, but it's basically a database that houses all those emails. So we'll get into just the cold facts here of just how to set up a canned email. So if we go into Dubsado here, and where your canned emails are going to be located is over here underneath templates and then canned emails. And this will bring up a list of the canned emails that you have in your account. Now, if you are newer to Dubsado and getting signed up, you'll notice that there's a lot of canned emails that come with your account. Those are custom, well, I will say custom, but those are canned emails that were created for you to use, and you can edit those and then add those to your process, send those out to your clients. So the purpose of the emails that come with your account are different instances and different scenarios that you might go through in your business process. And those are set up for you that you can see those and then make edits to those to more fit how you would communicate with a client, but just take some of that normal functionality and then maybe switch it up a little bit. So in here, in this account, I have just some emails that I created. We're actually going to walk through some of these and talk through some of them to give you guys an idea on what's possible in the system, and then take what's possible and then fit it to what you're doing with your business. So in the system, to create a new canned response, we'll just kind of talk through this here at the beginning, is you'll just click new canned response at the top, and that'll be how you'll create that. But before we create one, the first thing we'll talk about is connecting your email. So a lot of people ask, when I'm sending emails through Dubsado, how does this really work? What you're going to do is connect your email account that you want to send emails through. So if it's a Gmail, if it is, a Outlook, if it's, any one of those Office 365, different things like that you want to use, you can connect your email and then use that email to send things to your clients. So you're not using a Dubsado email, you're using your own email. Dubsado is just the machine that's sending it out. So what you can do first is if we go into Dubsado and go up to the settings gear up at the top here, and then go over to the emails tab, this is going to be where you can connect your email. And actually what I'll do here is I'll disconnect the email that I have. But you'll see this here where you can either sign in with Google. So if you have a Gmail, you can just click that. If you have an email that's outside of Gmail, you can click use SMTP. And if you click on that, it's going to give you a way that you can select your email provider. So if you do have iCloud or Hotmail, Yahoo, some of those, you can click on the option that fits you best, and then you can link up your email there. So with this, one thing I will say is that with Dubsado, the integration that works the absolute best, some people ask this, is Gmail. You don't have to find server information, port information, all of that. If you have a Gmail, it works so well. If you just click on sign in with Google, it makes it really easy to use that. So if you are kind of thinking about what email should I use that works the best, always do sign in with Google. If you're still trying to figure out what email you want to use or create, I would do a Gmail, but you can definitely use any of these other options and then link it up that way. If you have any questions about how to set this up or your email isn't working properly, the best thing you can do is write us a chat, because in the chat, they have ways that they can look to see if things are working appropriately, and they can kind of talk you through that, providing you with port numbers and all of that. So message our chat support if you're having trouble with your email or you have questions about getting that linked up. The other thing with setting up your email is that currently Dubsado can only have one email per brand at the moment. So that means that when you're inside of a brand here, you can only have one outgoing email that you can use in the system. So what I normally recommend is if you are working with a team of people, until we introduce the ability to have multiple email addresses inside of Dubsado, my recommendation would be to have like an info at your brand name, or hello at, or support at, and do kind of a generic email. So that way everyone on your team can use that email. And then once we introduce the capability to have multiple email addresses in a brand, then you'll be able to have your specific ones in there. So that's how you'll connect your email. This actually gets overlooked quite a bit too, and people don't set this part up. If you don't set this up, then all of your emails are going to be going from mail@dubsado.com, and then there's a cap with how many you can send out from there, and you'll get an error message. It'll go to spam. So just make sure you set up your email here, and then everything you send from Dubsado will come from that email. And then when people reply to that, it will be coming into that email as well. So that's how the email functionality works there. So let's get into actually creating a canned email. So if we go in here and we'll go to templates and canned emails, and we'll just click new canned response. So in this area, it's going to be where you just create the body of the email. Now, one thing I will recommend when you're creating these canned responses is just to create the shell of what you're going to be using. You can go in when you're sending this through a workflow, or before you send this out to a client, you can make customizations inside of the project or inside of the workflow before you send it out if it's very specific to that client. This is going to be where you create just the general template, just the general outline, and you can use smart fields to autofill some of the information to make it a little bit more customized to the person that you're communicating with. So let's say we're just going to create a basic thank you for your inquiry email. The title, the client will never see the title of this email. So one thing you can do is title these in a way that makes sense to you. We'll talk about that in a little while too, as far as naming conventions and all of that. But for this one, I'm going to call this clients, and we'll call this inquiry. And then the subject, the client can see this. So this is going to be what the client sees when they open up their email. So I'll just call this thank you for inquiring, and we'll plug that in. And now we're going to get into smart fields and how these work so that you can customize this to, fit the client that you're working with. Let me just remove this here, and we'll start from scratch. So when you're creating the email, like I said, you want to create just a general shell of what you want to say. And then inside of there, you can add in smart fields to customize it a little bit more, or you can leave gaps in there if you want to insert text that's specific to that client that you can't really just autofill with any smart field. So here I would say something like, hey, and then down here is the smart field, and we'll talk about all of these here in a second. But with the smart field, you can use these to autofill information, and these give you the different categories of smart fields that we have to autofill information. So if I click on client here, this will give me all the different pieces of client information that I can autofill. So here I would say, hey, client first name, and it's going to autofill that in there. And I'll put like an exclamation point because I get excited when I'm talking to people. So, hey, client name, thank you for inquiring. I can't wait to chat with you. Give me 24 hours to review your inquiry form. And I'll just put that in there. I don't know if that's what you would say running a business, but that's what it's going to be today. So you have that in there. And then you can even put in smart field, and then underneath the business variables, we'll talk about these next. This will give you information you can autofill about your own business. So if I wanted to put in business name or my email signature, that would go at the bottom. And so that's going to be how you would create an email, is using smart fields to put in information that's going to autofill things, but you just want to create the overall shell. If you want to put in something where you know you're going to be typing in specific text about the client, but you don't know what that is yet, you could do something like this where you say insert specific text here. And this will let you know whenever you're going to use this email that that's going to be where you insert the specific text that isn't able to have a smart field autofill it. It's not something that's general. It's very specific for the client. So you can put placeholders in there. And so you'll know before you send it, this is where you're going to put in your specific text that can't be autofilled, and it's not just general information. So you can do things like that as well when you're creating your just overall shell. And so let's say that we save that, and that's going to be just our inquiry email. So let's talk about the different smart fields and what you can autofill on there, and then know what you can't. So if we go in here and we'll click on smart field, we'll just kind of do just a general rundown of these. The project smart fields, this is going to give you information about the specific project you're working on. So if you are in event planning, if you're in weddings, if you're a photographer and you have event-based things, you can put in the project start date, you can put in the start time, the end date, the address, location name. This is really great if you have more of an event-based, or if you have a photo shoot or something that revolves around a certain event. You can use project information. That works out really well. Client information, we talked about that. If you want to autofill information about the specific client, their phone number, email, things like that. For another example here, we could say, I have your phone number at, and then we could do smart field client phone number. So that's going to look at the specific phone number for that client when I'm sending it through that project, and it will autofill it there. So you can do things like that. Invoice information, if you want to autofill anything that has to do with the invoice, you can have that go onto your emails. These work on forms as well, so you can autofill information about forms. Business information is information regarding your business. So it would put in your first name or last name, your logo, your business name, things like that. The date smart field section, this is for today's current date. So if you wanted to put in the date and time for today, or like the medium date, the short date, all of those different things, you can put that in there. The link, we'll talk a lot more about this in a little while, but this is where you can put in the links to specific content in the system. So if you want to put in a link so they can access a certain form, we get the question a lot of, how do I attach my proposal to a canned email? In Dubsado, and again, we'll talk about this later, I'm kind of jumping the gun. In Dubsado, you're actually going to just put a placeholder in for your content. And then once you're going to send it out through a project, you pick the actual content first. So you pick your proposal first and then the email. We'll get into that later, but this is where you can put in those buttons that you see whenever you're sending things out. This is going to give you the different buttons that you can use that they'll click on to access that content. That's underneath the link section to link up specific content. The appointment, this is if you want to autofill appointment information. So this has location, duration, start date of when the appointment is, start time, cancellations, things like that. The form, this is going to give you information regarding the actual form that you're sending. So once you pick that content, this is going to autofill information about that specific content. And then we'll talk about payment schedule. Payment schedule, these are smart fields that will autofill information about the payment when you're sending this through a payment schedule. So, or through a payment schedule in the reminder emails, this will autofill that information there. So those are the different smart field areas or categories that you can use whenever you're sending out information. You can autofill a lot of that info. And we'll talk about specific examples in a little while, but that's just a broad discussion about the different smart fields there. Two quick things on the outline. Appointment smart fields, these are designed to show information regarding a booked appointment. and that means that you've booked it through the scheduler. So these will only work properly when you're sending the email that has those smart fields in it, when you're sending it through a scheduler template. So it has to be added to a scheduler template for those appointment smart fields to work. Payment schedules works about the same way. So similar to those appointment reminders, these only work when you're sending a payment reminder email through a payment schedule. So if you're using these here underneath smart field and payment schedule, this email, if you're using those, has to go into a payment schedule in the reminder section in order for it to work appropriately. And the appointment reminders, this email would have to be put onto an actual scheduler template and then booked through a scheduler in order for it to work appropriately. So that's just a little bit of extra information there for you if you're wanting to use those. Last thing, and then we'll talk about just methods of sending and all of that, and how you can send emails and how it works. But you can also add your email signature. We get a lot of questions about that. Where can I add my email signature? You can do that by clicking on, we'll go to the canned emails main section here, the signature button right next to canned response. This is where you can create your email signature. And so in the emails that you have, if we go to this one here, if you have your email signature smart field, it will just take what you have in that signature area and then paste it in there. And you can put in HTML code, you can put in tables and different things like that to customize it more. But that will autofill whatever's in that signature area there. We get a lot of questions regarding that. Awesome. So let's talk about methods of sending. We'll spend a good amount of time in here because this is probably the most important piece whenever you're setting up your canned emails to pay attention to. And so this is kind of the crux of the webinar today. So with methods, and this is how you're going to be able to send out emails. If you get anything from this webinar today, I would say this is the biggest piece to get. In Dubsado, you will always select the content you want to send first, and then you'll pick the email that goes with that content. So normally whenever you're emailing people, if you're using Gmail or you're in Yahoo and you're sending things out, normally how things go is you'll write the email, click an attachment button, and then add whatever attachment you want to go with it. That's just how kind of emailing works in just the normal world. In Dubsado, how it works is the exact opposite. You will always pick the content that you want to send first. So if you want to send a proposal to a client, if you want to send a questionnaire or a scheduler template or an invoice, anything like that, you'll always pick the content that you want to send first, and then you'll pick the canned email that goes with that content. You're basically picking the vehicle that's going to send that content out to the client. That's foundational Dubsado information. If you're planning on using workflows, if you're planning on sending anything to a client, you're always going to use that kind of thought process when you're doing that. And I'll show you how all of that works in these next 4 points here. So the first thing we'll talk about is just sending a canned email manually if you aren't using a template. So if you're using just a plain text email that doesn't have any attachments, you're not sending out a proposal, you're not sending a questionnaire, you're just sending just a plain email. What I'll do here is if I go into templates and canned emails, I'll create one that says clients, great working with you. And I'll put it was great to work with you. And literally in here, I'm just going to put, hey, client name. It was awesome working with you. And that's literally all I'm going to put in there. It's just a plain text email. There's no attachments that are going to go in there. I'm not trying to send out any forms or anything like that. It's just a plain email. And I'll save this. If you have an email that works that way, inside of a project, what you're going to do is go into the project that you want to send this email. This is just a foundational piece of information too, is that everything goes through a project. So you have to have a project if you're going to be sending out forms and have workflows running, the appointments, sending emails and invoices, all of that runs through a project. So what you'll do if you're sending out a canned email that doesn't have any attachments with it, no templates, you'll just go to the project. You'll go to the emails tab. It's the first email that pops up there, and you'll click send email. And then down here in the bottom, if you see this little bookmark icon, this is where all of your canned emails live. So I would click on this, and this will bring up all of the different canned responses that I have, and I can choose which one I want to use. So here's that great working with you that I created. If you click on that, it's going to autofill that information. Now, as you can see, the only smart field I had in there was the client name. So when I'm inside of the project, the smart field is looking at who's on this project, and it's autofilling that information. If it had a date in there, which this one has a date, it would autofill the date for this particular project. So that's what smart fields are doing for you, is pulling in information that's about the client, about the project, or about the invoice in this project, things like that. So this is what you would do if you're just sending a plain email, no templates. The next thing we'll talk about, and this will be a little bit more interesting so you can see how this works, because this is the one that typically people have the most questions about, is sending a canned email manually with a template. So this is if you're inside of a project and you say, I want to send out a questionnaire to the client, or I want to send a proposal to my client. How do I do that? That's what we'll cover now. So we'll go into the canned emails here so we can talk about adding in links to things. So if we go into this one here, this is an email that I have created, and we'll talk about adding this in. So I have this one called Clients Coaching Intake Form. This is the one I want to use if I want to send out a coaching intake form to someone. So please fill out your intake form here in the subject line. Pretty straightforward there. Hey, client name, I'm so excited to get started with you. Please fill out the coaching intake form below, and we can get started once you submit it back to me. Now, the question that most people have is, now how do I attach my coaching intake form to this email? But in Dubsado, it works the opposite way. I'm going to pick my intake form first, and then I need to have a place in this email where my coaching intake form is going to go after I select it. So what you can do in the system is you can add in what's called a smart field link. And that, like we talked about, was under smart field link. And then you can find your links in here to add into this email. So when I go to my project, I'll pick my coaching intake form and then use this email to send it out to the client. So in here, what I would use, because I'm using a questionnaire, and in the system, if you're sending out a questionnaire, a proposal, or a sub-agreement, if you're taking notes, you can write this down. If you're sending out a questionnaire, sub-agreement, or proposal, you'll always use form link for that, because those are considered the forms that go with that link in the system. If it's a contract that has its own separate link, contracts are kind of their own separate entity in the system. They're not considered underneath that form link group. So in here, since I'm sending out a questionnaire, I'll put a form link in there. You have scheduler links if you want to choose the scheduler template you want to go in that link, but I'll put a form link in there, and I'll show you how this works now. So I'll click Save and Close. So if I go to a project now, because remember, when I'm sending things out to the client, I always want to pick the content first, and then I want to choose the email that goes with it. So I'll go into my project here and go to the Forms tab, and I'll pick my content here first. So this gives you a list of all of the different forms that you have in the system, your master templates. And I'll click my coaching intake form. And this will pull up a preview here of the intake form that I want to send out. Now, in this section here, this is also really great, just foundational information for you. This is a preview of my master template. If I click Add, that's going to create a copy of my master template, and it's going to add it into this project. So at this point, if I click Edit on here, I can edit this form specifically for this project. I'm not messing with my master template anymore. I'm only messing with the one that's inside of this particular project. So I can make changes in here specific for the client. And that works with everything, contracts, proposals, anything. Once you add it to a project, it creates a copy. And now I'm not messing with my master template anymore. So in here, if I were to click send, because I've picked my content first, now I can come down here and I can mess with what email I'm going to use. This is the default email that pops up. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But if I click on my canned emails here, now I want to grab my coaching intake form email because I'm choosing the vehicle that I want to use to send this out to the client. And I'll click my coaching intake form. And now here we go. So I have, hey, Patrick. For those of you who don't know, I'm a huge Chiefs fan. Go Chiefs. So, hey, Patrick, I'm excited to get started with you. Please fill out your coaching intake form. And then where that form link is at, it's looking at the form that I picked and it's plugging it in there. So if I go to my canned emails, just so you guys can see the correlation here, this is what it's doing real time. It's looking at that client's name. It's looking at the form link and it's plugging in a button for that client to click on now, related to what form I picked. Now, what that means is this. I can go back to that same project now, and this is where you can kind of think about how you want to create your emails. If I go to the form here, and let's say I select a engagement session questionnaire instead. So this is obviously not what a questionnaire should look like, but I'll just use this as an example. If I add this now and I click send, and I go down here to my bookmark icon where all my canned emails are, I can literally select this email, that coaching intake form, and it's going to plug in whatever form I pick. So that's what that link does for you, those brackets, is it can literally just be a placeholder for you. And then depending on what content you're using, you can use that email to send it out. So how does this work in favor for you with using a form link? What you can do is if you go to a canned email section here, and let's say we pick new canned response, and we'll just call this clients form email. And we'll say, please fill out your form. What you can do now is if you said, hey, client name, I don't even know if hey is what you're supposed to be saying to clients, but it's more informal. But if you say, please fill out your, and if we go to smart field and then form, this is where you can have kind of a different way of using a canned email to send different forms. So if you say, please fill out your form type or form kind, it's going to put in what type of form it is you're sending. And then you could put in, if you do smart field form and then form title, it's going to put the title of your form in there. And then you could put in smart field form link. You can grab it there too, or underneath the link here and put in a form link. So now this is what it gives you the ability to do if you're using just more general information about your form. If you go to a project now, and we'll go back into this test project. If I go here to my coaching intake form, I can click send on this and then pick my client form email. It's going to say, please fill out your questionnaire and plug in the name, and it'll put the actual link in there for them to click on it. If I do the exact same thing with a, let's say, a subcontract, and I'll add that in there and click send. If I click the same email and I click form email here, now it's going to say, hey, Patrick, please fill out your subcontract and then put the name of it in there. So that form kind is going to adapt to whatever form I'm sending. The link is going to be whatever form I'm picking, and that's how it's going to autofill. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys on how those links work. You're always going to pick your content first. If I was sending a contract out, I would pick the contract first and then click send and then choose the email I want to use to send out my contract. So that's going to be how that works there. So project, pick the content, send, bookmark icon. Now we're going to take that same thought process and that same information, and then we're going to go into number 3, which is sending a canned email in a workflow with no template. So no attachments here. So what you would do in a workflow is, if we go into the workflow, and this is one reason why I always tell people that you should do things manually first in the system before you jump into workflows, because what you're going to do is take that same thought process, you'll use the same learning that you took from what we just did there and apply that to building a workflow. So if I go in here and I say test, and we'll go to the next step. If I want to send out an email in a workflow that's just a plain text email, there's no links to a proposal, no links to a form or anything like that, I would go into my action here and I would just say send email. If you're planning on sending just a plain text email, you'll click send email, and then you'll pick from here in this email to send. This will bring up a list of all of the different canned emails that you have in the system. So I would go here and I would pick my great working with you. There's nothing in there. It's just a plain text email. I'm sending that out, and that's it. So that's what you would do if you're planning on just sending a regular email out to the client. You'll pick from your canned emails there. If we're using the same type of process with what we did manually with a template, we apply that same knowledge when we're building a workflow template. So what you would do is, if you're sending out a questionnaire, if you're sending out a proposal or a contract or a scheduler template, what you would do is pick the content you want to send out first, and then you'll pick the email that goes with it. So if I want to send out that questionnaire, we'll use the same logic. If I click add action, if I want to send out that questionnaire now, the coaching intake form, let's say, I would choose send form because I want to actually send out a template that I have. And then right here is going to be where you select from a list of the templates that you have. You're going to select which one you want to send. So when I scroll through here, I'll find my coaching intake form. So I'm picking the content I want to send first. And then in the email that I want to use, the vehicle that I want to send this form out, I'll click this. And then here we go. I'm excited to work with you. Fill out the coaching intake form link. With this being said, this form link is going to look at the content that I picked there first and then autofill it in there. So the exact same logic that you're using when you're sending something through a project manually, you apply the exact same knowledge whenever you're building your workflow. So if you're new to Dubsado and you're wanting to jump into workflows, but you're not really sure how to just send things through a project manually, you're going to get to this place and you might choose send email, wanting to send out a scheduler template, but it doesn't work that way because you would actually have to pick send appointment scheduler, then choose the content that you want to send. So if I want to send out my coffee chat scheduler template, and then the scheduler link is going to be what holds that button for the coffee chat that I selected. So that's going to be, you're going to use that same logic manually that you would when building a workflow. And that's how it works there. Really quick, you'll use send form for questionnaires, proposals, and sub-agreements. If you have a contract, you can put in a contract link and send contract. This is an advanced tip. So for those of you guys who are further along in your Dubsado setup and you kind of understand what I'm talking about already and you're wanting to get more of an advanced tip, you're not able to add a form link and a scheduler link in the same email when you're sending things out through a workflow, because there's not an option right now to select both the scheduler template and the form template that you want to use. I'll show you what I mean by that. If you're wanting to send out a scheduler to somebody, so let's say I want to send out my coffee chat, and in the same email, you want to just throw in a form link. So we'll just throw one in there. The problem with doing this is that there's nothing that we've selected here to say what's going to go with the form link. We have picked what's going to go with the scheduler link, so you're not able to do this at the moment, put a scheduler link and a form link in the same email. Same thing. This is just a little bit of a bonus because I'm kind of on a roll here. So the same thing applies if you're using a form. You're not able to have, let's say, 2 form links in the same email. The reason why is because here, if I pick my coaching agreement or my coaching intake form, I've picked one for the first link, but there's nothing in here that says, well, what's going to go with that other link? So you can't have multiple form links in an email. You can't have multiple scheduler links. And then schedule and form have to be separated. You can't do both of those in the same email. So hopefully that makes sense on why, because there's not a way to select the content that you want to go with that smart field link. So that's how you'll send emails through Dubsado. There's really no other way to do it in the system. You either send it manually with no template, send it manually with a template, and then that same logic for workflows. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys and kind of shows you your different options for sending emails to your client. Now let's get into some examples. So you might be saying, okay, great. I know how to make a canned email. I know how to send one, but I don't really know what canned emails I need. Can you provide some assistance on that? I definitely can. So a great way to identify what canned emails would be appropriate for you in your business would be to first ask yourself this question. Are there any emails that I've sent to more than 3 clients? So if you have an email that you've used that you've sent out to more than 3 people, that's a canned email. You might as well create that in the system so that you don't have to retype that email over and over again when you're building a workflow, when you're sending it out just through a project. So just think to yourself, what emails am I sending right now that I send out to everybody? Whatever you think about when I said that, that's a canned email that needs to be in the system. Now, there might be some that you're using right now, and there might be more that you might not have thought about. So I wrote out some examples here just to kind of spark some creativity on what's possible. So any inquiry emails, onboarding or welcome emails that you have, scheduling invitations. So if you're inviting someone to book a call with you, scheduling confirmation emails, scheduling appointment reminders, payment reminders for upcoming payments that are due, overdue payments. If you're in Dubsado, you'll notice that those already come with the system, the payment reminder emails, but you can edit those or create your own. Client portal invitations. So if you want to create an email that's inviting the client to go into their portal, you can create those. Follow-up emails or reminder emails saying, hey, I haven't heard from you, or just following up. Once you're finished working with them, any review or feedback emails. If you have a link to a survey that you want them to fill out, you can do that. Any anniversary or birthday emails that you want to send, or pre and post event emails. Anything saying, hey, I know your thing is coming up soon, just want to touch base with you. You can create those. Not a good fit is a really great one too as well. If you're just not a good fit and you type that out a lot, you can create that. Or just a checking in. Hey, just seeing how you're doing. You could create something like that. So hopefully those give you some ideas on what types of canned emails you would make. You can locate the default emails under the edit template section. So when you're inside of a project, and let's say I want to send a form out to the client, we'll choose the coaching intake form and I click send. Not sure why that's doubling up there. Let me go here to send form and I'll just do one fresh here. We'll do this proposal and we'll click add, and then we'll click, once this loads up, click send. Not sure why that's doubling up. I think I might have, maybe I messed with the email that goes out with this. Once again, you just gotta roll with the punches sometimes. So with this here, click on this. My apologies, guys. Let me remove some of these extra ones that I have on here. That could be why this is messing up. So with whenever you're sending out a form to a client, let me try this fresh here, see if this works. There we go. So whenever you're sending out a form to a client, a lot of people ask, what email is this? If you're sending out a scheduler template, if you're sending out an invoice or anything like that, a contract, most people say, where is this email coming from? What is this email? These are the default emails in the account. So these are ones that come with the system that are just the default ones whenever you're completing a certain action. So in here, if we go to templates and then canned emails, Underneath the edit template section here, this is where all of the just default emails that go out with whatever you're doing, unless you choose a custom one, these are the ones that will go out with it. So in here, if we go to send form, this is the email that is happening anytime you're trying to send a form. So, hey, client name, it's putting in the full name there. We've completed this form kind. So we've completed this questionnaire for you to fill out. And then here's that bracket. As you can see, it's auto-filling that in there. So in there, that's going to be where it's pulling from when you're doing that information. That's where you can edit those emails. So if you're wondering where those are located, that's underneath templates, canned emails, and then edit templates. So your portal email, if you're trying to send your client portal info to somebody, that email that pops up that says, here's the link to your client portal, this is where you'll see all of your emails in one place. Your password is this client portal link. That's what it's pulling from. So this is a great place to go in if you're not wanting to create custom ones and you're just wanting to use the ones that come with the system when you're doing those actions. You can just edit these, and then that will be the default one that sends out with things there. So that can give you some ideas on templates that you want to use. So now we'll get into the very last thing here, and then I'll answer questions from you guys. Creation tips. So this is kind of a tips, tricks, and FAQs that people normally have. We'll kind of cover these. Every template you will send a client, as you can see from today, will require an email to go with that template. So if I have a coaching intake form that I want to send out to somebody, as you can see, it helps to have an email that goes with that form. A lot of people in the system, you know, when you're building your workflows and you're saying, hey, I want to send a proposal to my client first, a lot of people forget, oh, I need to create an email that goes with that proposal to send out, because how else is the client going to get it? So one thing I recommend doing is going through all of your form templates. So if you go to templates and forms, go through all of your forms and think to yourself, which ones of these am I sending out to a client via email? If I have anything in here that I'm sending out to a client via email, I need to go into my canned emails area and create an email to go with it. Because when you're building a workflow, you're going to say, I want to send out my proposal. Here is the proposal email that I'm going to use. You kind of saw how I did that earlier. So that's just a little creation tip for you guys. If you see any forms that you know you need to send out, make an email to go with that form and just put in your form link or scheduler link or contract link. Next thing, scheduler templates have 3 emails that can go with them: the invitation email, the confirmation email, and appointment reminders. So when you're making your canned emails, if we go here and if we scroll down, you can see down here at the bottom that I have 3 different types of emails. I have my invitation email saying, I thank you so much for showing interest in working with me. I would love to hop on a call with you. Please click the link below to get on my calendar. And I have my scheduler link. This is called the invitation email. In your scheduler templates, we actually talked about this last week when we were talking about scheduling in Dubsado. This email down here at the bottom is called the invitation email. So it's inviting the client to book a call with you. So you need your scheduler link in there. The other emails that go with that are the confirmation email that you can add in there, as well as in the notification section, adding in an appointment reminder. So when you're building your canned emails, you can think, if I'm using a scheduler, technically there's 3 emails that I need to build that go with that scheduler template. So in here, that also means, kind of a bonus tip, that the confirmation and appointment reminders don't need to go out in a workflow because they're built into the scheduler template. So that's just kind of some free advice that goes in there. We kind of talked about that last week with scheduling and how all of that works. Styling tips. Always put smart field links. So the buttons that we clicked, you'll kind of see how I did that there. Always put that on a separate line, not within text. What I mean by that is, some people that I've seen when they're creating their canned emails, let's take this coaching intake form here. always put your links on a separate line because it's going to create that button. So some people might say, please fill out, and they'll put the link in here, and they'll say, please fill out the coaching intake form here, and they'll plug in this link right here in the middle of the text. What that's going to do is put in that big button right in the middle of your text, and it's going to look really weird. So when you're styling your forms out, always put your links on its own kind of separate line in here, because that's going to give space for that button for your client to click on. So don't put it in the middle of your text, because it'll just make a massive button right in the middle of that text there. So put it on its own separate line so it looks good there. That's a quick styling tip for you. You can copy smart fields into the subject line. So in some of these emails that I have, let's see, I have one for this one, a portal invitation email. So in this here, I have a client smart field that's going to autofill their name in there. So if I want this to say, hey, client name, welcome to your client portal in the subject line, you can autofill smart fields into that subject line. Just copy and paste those in there. And this too with portal, I'll just show you here. Here's my portal link. I have a little thing that says like password, and it's auto-filling the password in there. So you can do some things like that for your emails. And then developing your own naming convention for emails and forms and projects, packages, scheduler templates. It will help you stay organized. So in the system, if we look at the canned emails here, as you can see, I have a naming convention that I'm using for all of my emails. It makes it look really great, and I can see the different types of emails that I need and where they're at. So anything that's related to just sending things out to a client, I have clients dash this. Payment reminders have their own kind of header there. Scheduler emails have their own header. Remember, the client cannot see the name of these emails, so you can title these what you want. Some people might put a number before each one so they know with their workflow kind of how the succession of each email goes, and they use numbering for that. It's important to develop your own naming convention, so that way when you come into this section, it's not all jumbled up and you're saying, I have no idea where this particular email's at. Use a naming convention, develop your own system for organizing your emails so that it looks great for you and it's easy to see where your emails are at. If I'm in a workflow here, and if we go to the test one that we were working on and click add action, and let's say I want to send an email out, if I click the email that I want to send, as you can see here, it makes it a lot easier to identify the emails that I want to use because I put my own naming convention on things. So I know if I want to click send appointment scheduler and I choose my coffee chat that I want to do, then I can come to my email and I want to use my scheduler invitation email. Thank you for showing interest with me. I'd love to hop on a call. The scheduler link will now go with whatever I picked there. So it helps to have kind of a good solid naming convention, and you can use whatever method you want to use there, but that's a good practice whenever you're doing your projects, emails, forms, and all of that. Another thing too, and this is so important as well, send yourself emails before using a workflow. It's important to know aesthetically what your emails are going to look like to your clients before you send them out. Create yourself as a test project with your own email and send yourself emails. Quality can lead to more business. The better quality you have with your different pieces of content, the more business it's going to generate for you because people see, oh, this looks really great. And a lot of people I've heard say, oh, I've seen someone else use Dubsado, and because of how great it looked, now I want to use the system. That's the reason why you want to test things out. If you have an email in the system, if we go to templates and canned emails, and you plug in your smart field link into the actual text here, like we talked about, and send that out to a client, it's going to look really bad. And that client might say, oh, this looks really awful. I don't know if I want to work with this person. That can speak volumes. So make sure you send things to yourself through a project manually before you even get into workflow and automation and all of that. Just so from an aesthetic standpoint, you really see, okay, this is what it's going to look like to the client when it comes through. And the more you test, the more you realize how things are going to look. So those are some styling tips for you. Last thing here really quickly, and I'll answer questions. A lot of people say, do you guys have email blast or newsletter capabilities? We don't. The reason why is because we're more focused on just a one-on-one relationship. So Dubsado is not able to send out bulk emails or any type of kind of sales newsletter that you might send out. We usually recommend a separate email marketing platform for that purpose. So we did have it on our list, but we are planning at some point in time to integrate with MailChimp and ConvertKit. The last that I checked, it's on there. That might have changed, but those are the platforms that we're planning on integrating with so that you can do your email blasts and all of that. This, I'll just kind of take a quick moment because some people have had questions about this, and I can just address this right off the bat too. So a lot of people might ask, well, then what's the difference between Dubsado then and a MailChimp or a Flowdesk or ConvertKit? The whole point of the MailChimp and kind of ConvertKit strategy is to just send out those newsletters, kind of throw your fishing pole out there to see if you can get a bite. Once someone says, hey, I'm showing interest in wanting to work with you, or they say, hey, why don't you tell me a little bit more about this package? I'm interested now, and you get a bite. That's when Dubsado comes into the mix. So that's what the difference between those two platforms is. MailChimp, ConvertKit, Flowdesk, all that email marketing and kind of sales funnels that you have running in the newsletters that you send out, that's meant for outside of Dubsado. And then as soon as someone comes out of that pool and shows direct interest, that's where Dubsado kicks in, and you can send them a link to get on a call and send them a proposal, contract, and kind of start to nurture that lead that showed direct interest. So that's kind of the differences between those two platforms. So I wanted to throw that out there. And then another one we get to as well is, can you make folders for your emails? You can't at the moment. That's something we actually want to incorporate, but developing a great naming convention. So if you look at how I did my emails, if you develop a solid naming convention, you can kind of group emails into certain pockets. So by doing this, you can group things a little bit better. And how these emails are listed is in alphabetical order. So take that into consideration, that it's all alphabetical, and you can use a great naming convention. And that's how you can kind of group things into the right pockets. So that's something that I wanted to also address as well.